Hello, Bizarre Story friends. You've tuned in to the Bizarre AF, a place where we talk about the strange, the unusual, the unknown, and all things Bizarre AF. I'm Kevin. I'm going to be your host for today's episode, and as always, we ask that you keep an open mind, keep a skeptical ear, but keep listening to the facts as we take you on our newest journey, the bizarre world of cloning. Hello, my Bizarre Story friends and my bizarre story co-host, Alicia. Hey, girlfriend.
Hey. How are we?
Oh, I think we're great.
I have my coffee here. I am so excited to listen to today's episode and learn a little bit more about cloning.
Yes.
I know like 3 things. And okay, here's another thing I know.
Okay.
It scares the shit out of me.
Does it?
It does, because did you ever see that movie The Island or something like that?
I think, is that with
Ewan McGregor and Scarlett Johansson.
Maybe not.
Yeah,
Is it about that?
it's about clones.
Ooh, I think I need to go watch that.
Yeah, it's about clones, and it's like all these rich people have clones for like basically body parts, like when but the clones don't know it.
Love that movie.
Yes,
I
it's so good.
remember. It's so good, and they think they're going to an island, right?
Yeah, it's something like where they
like
think,
the clones are getting raised, and they think they're going somewhere that they really aren't.
yes, yeah, and they live, and like they live really healthy lives, of course.
Perfect, like nutrition.
Yes, and if like something's a little bit like, if you're having too much sodium or whatever, like they're alerted to it.
Yes.
But yeah, like, so it's almost like winning the lottery. They're like, oh, hopefully my number gets picked so I can go to the island.
Yes.
And in reality, like, they're just being harvested for parts. And I guess
for their
rich
person that they got cloned from.
Yes, the OG.
Okay.
The original.
Well, we're not gonna be far off of that topic.
Of course not.
So I guess that takes me. I mean, I was gonna ask you, when I mention cloning, what's the first thing that pops into your mind? And it's that.
Yes, and the goat or the sheep or whatever.
The sheep, Dolly.
Dolly. I was gonna say Sally.
Yeah, because then my second question was gonna be, if I said if I matched an image to the word clone, would you think of a field full of sheep or a field full of army soldiers?
Ooh. Yeah, probably initially a field full of sheep. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Good. Well, most people do, and I think a lot of it's because they think of the scary part, because movies don't help. But they do. They think of nefarious.
Because
Activity.
any way that you can take, like, anything, like, okay, you have technology, it's going to be used for evil.
That's exactly right.
Just assume that
Yeah.
people are not.
Your good thing will be evil.
Yes, it will be turned bad in some way,
Yeah.
and they'll make money off of it.
Exactly. That's also what it boils down to. So Alicia asked me the other day, she says, hey, do you happen to know how I can get more time in my day? Because she was kind of stressed out. And I said, yes, I said, no, I don't know how to get more time in your day other than being cloned. But I've already called dibs on that, so stay out of my lane, girl. Yeah. And Alicia goes, oh, no, you can have your lane. I want no part of your lane.
Who's like, oh my God, please, like, not let's not have like this topic be something that that gets in between our friendship. Oh
yeah,
God.
right, exactly. Okay, so the truth is that scientists have been conducting cloning experiments for over 50 years. And they're using all sorts of techniques. And actually, there are many companies that would tell you today that I'm too late, that my dib calling was too late. And we'll talk about them.
Okay.
We'll talk about them. I also bring this topic up, and I thought this was a good week to do it amidst the recent developments in Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
And just to recap this scenario for everyone, a clinician in a Mobile, Alabama IVF facility was handling frozen embryos and somehow either touched the frozen container or something and burned his hand, and his reaction, quite reasonably, was to drop what he was holding, and it happened to be the embryos, which destroyed them. And this led to a lawsuit from the three couples who were, mourning this accidental destruction of the embryos and really wanted to hold somebody accountable for murder. And the court agreed that these cells were, in fact, children. So if you kill cells, you kill a person. And this started my analytical mind, because that's what I do.
Yeah.
Down the road of how do we define what an embryo is? And if an embryo is created via a sperm entering an egg, if it's the same thing as taking like a somatic cell and putting it in an oocyte, which is ultimately cloning, is that the same thing? And if so, well, then that means a clone is no different than you and I. But then you have religious people who believe that, in the Alabama law that would tell you this is in fact like an abomination of God. I mean, this is this whole dichotomy of back and forth and, one belief contradicting another belief. I mean, it gets real cray-cray.
It does. And how, you continue to, how far are we going to distill this? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I'm a woman, I have a period, and every single month when an egg is released, which sounds like reptilian and fucking weird as shit, doesn't it? It's
well, because we're going to talk about you are actually, you exist because you are a clone of a reptile, but we'll get to that in a minute. A reptile. But,
is that a child? Even though it has not been fertilized. It's just the natural release of a woman's body every month.
An egg.
Is that actually a child? Because it has a potential for it.
It has potential, right? And so then I think people, yes, you're right. And we could go down some really crazy, deep fucking rabbit holes today. But I want to keep this super bizarre and super fun and educational. So we're going to try not to get into those weeds too much. But for now, we're going to go back to about 17 years ago. Okay. And this was February 23rd of 1997. And do you know what happened wait, when were you born?
I was born 10 years prior, so 1987. Okay.
Do you know what happened in February 23rd of 1997?
I'm going to guess Dolly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So on that day, news was leaked out in a scientific journal called Nature, that they were about to report that after 276 attempts,
oh my God,
Scottish researchers actually succeeded in cloning the first mammal using a sonomic cell from an adult animal, and then produced Dolly, the little lamb. And she was created from the udder cell, not the other cell, the udder cell of a 6-year-old sheep. Now, the news of this event had everyone abuzz.
Yeah,
it was huge. Mixed emotions. People were shocked. Some people were surprised. Some people were mortified. Some people were scared.
Me.
And then others, of course, were titillated and curious. So for those who weren't peeing their pants with fear, the discussions were, what about humans? Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, could we make designer humans? Oh, wait, could we take the genetic defects out and make a perfect baby? Could we make armies of warriors? oh my God, the possibilities are endless.
Not let's just like not play God. Like maybe let's take a step back and like maybe not play God.
Well, it's exciting and new. And you know, you're going to have the good scientists that go, oh, but this can give us, this is how we cure diseases. This is how we're going to, you know.
Right.
And like you said, it always turns nefarious, but it has potential to be good. Now, at this moment, there are two OGBYNs named Servino oh, I hate when we can't pronounce names.
I know, it's so annoying.
Antinori, Savina Antinori,
There you go.
and Penoitis Zavos. And they announced that they would create the first human clone within 2 years.
What?
Uh-huh.
We go from sheep straight to
Yes. And at this time, right. And so this is announced, and they're like, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do humans in 2 years. And they said they had successfully started human clonal pregnancies, but neither ever announced any births. So now while all this is happening, all within a very short period of time after, you know, Dolly, all this stuff is like happening all of a sudden. Governments around the world started pushing out laws, right? And they're like trying to get emergency laws in that would ban human cloning because
Right.
people started talking about it and potentials. And so the governments and everyone are trying to get in front of it.
yeah, and which is like always the case, right? Like, okay, we need to have some kind of legislation that, you know, that gives either clones the rights or us humans the rights, but it's always lags behind technology and science, right?
Yes.
Because they don't really know. These are
And that's the other thing I would argue. Like putting a law into place is something that doesn't even exist yet. I think you're jumping the gun.
you're jumping the gun. I mean, it shows like it shows what public opinion is, which is terror. They're all frightened.
Yes.
So politicians are going to step in and be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. We're going to try to regulate it." But you have these politicians who don't know anything,
Right. Exactly.
and so they're trying to make rules for something that they have absolutely no idea about.
No, that's right. So if we're able to create humans, how would that conflict with people's belief systems and their Bibles?
Playing God, right?
If God creates humankind, but now humankind is creating humans, does it call into question God? Are they
Yes.
real people?
Uh-huh.
But God doesn't make mistakes.
Right.
But do they have souls? Are their souls only given to humans who are conceived, you know, with
Traditionally?
with a few minutes of debauchery? What about people who have IVF?
Yeah.
Those humans are born through science. They take a sperm, put it in an egg, put the thing in an oven,
Yes.
ba-boom, baby.
Yeah.
Cloning is ultimately the same thing, but instead of a sperm as a starting process, we're taking a copy of an existing nucleus that has the DNA in it and putting it in an egg and putting it in the oven. Mm-hmm. So this creates a lot of questions and
morality issues,
moral
right?
issues, sure. And if what makes us different, truly different, is what's on the inside, then does it matter that I have a clone? The clone still gets a soul. I mean, again, we're not going to answer these questions.
This is like a Twilight Zone, or I feel like all of our episodes are like Twilight Zone or like Star Trek episodes. Yeah. Like I already know how it plays out in Star Trek and what they think. Like design, like you're even saying designer babies. Like, so, okay, what if you have a child with Down syndrome and now you're like, well, we have this clone, or like we now know, like, and can control and design our own babies. I want a baby with blue eyes, not brown.
Right.
Well, I'm shit out of luck, right? Like, you know, then we're starting to, oh man, this is going to sound bad, but like breed out specific traits from our population.
Yes, be it for good or nefarious purposes, but you could
Exactly.
like take out all the bad cells that could create disease or
Right.
what people would consider a disability or
Like diabetes or something. You
diabetes,
wouldn't have to,
exactly.
yeah, which I don't know.
Is that a bad thing? Some people would argue,
Yeah.
yes, it is a bad thing. It's, yeah, like I said, there's lots of questions.
It's a can of worms.
It is a can of worms. Okay. There's a religious cult. Kevin had to go there.
yeah. You have me at religious cult. Tell me more.
Raelism. It's R-A-E-L, Rael, and when an E has two dots over it, it's another syllable. So it's Rael.
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 Okay.
Raelism. Have you ever heard of them?
No, I've never heard of it.
They are a faction founded in 1970 in France. And it was by a guy named Claude Vorilhon, I believe, also known as Rahel.
Ah.
Okay.
That's
Now,
a little of course.
Of
Cult
course.
leader's going to have
well, it's around him. He is
He's
Rael.
a narcissist. Yes.
Now, Raelism teaches that an extraterrestrial species known as Olhim created humanity using their advanced technologies by cloning themselves. So we are actually clones of this species.
Oh, okay.
Okay. There is an entire Wikipedia page
Dedicated to this.
dedicated to this. It is packed full of information. All of it, when I say validated and sourced, I mean there are. It's like people's not just making this stuff up, right? They, you know how Wiki is.
Oh, yeah.
That people will make sure that their sources are validated
Yes.
and that there's some truth behind it, whether you call it truth or not. Packed. So I'm not going to go into it, but it's something interesting to read.
Rael. And is this cult still around?
Yes. They are still around. And I bring them up because just at this time when Dolly is created, there's a lot's happening in this year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Rael starts a company called Clonaid.
Oh, God.
And they're specifically focused on human cloning. And he sees it as this is the first step to achieving immortality because he was created from a clone. Right?
Wackadoo.
And so this is how we will achieve mortality because we're gonna be the first company to actually clone a human, and then that's gonna be our deal. We're gonna clone humans.
So, okay. So Clonaid is the name of it.
Uh-huh.
Like, props for creativity, dude. Like, not very creative.
Clonaid.com still exists.
It still does?
Uh-huh.
Oh my God, I'm so gonna look at it.
It looks like a 1990s website built by a grade school child. I hate it. I think it's tacky. And why do by the way,
Yes.
this is my pet peeve. I'm going to
Please.
get off my soapbox on a tangent for a little bit. Why do cult websites have to look so fucking awful?
Because they are awful.
They're disgusting. They're cheesy. They're terrible.
Yes. With like those remember when you could put like they're not GIFs, what are they? Like little
Oh,
animations?
yes, the little animated, like, oh.
Like a guy who's at work and he has like the jackhammer and he's like,
Exactly.
you're like, why did we do this? It looks so dumb. Especially now when you can like do something like,
You can click a button and build your website.
yes.
Come
like
on,
there are
people.
templates. But
Anyway, Clonaid.com.
Clonaid.com. Okay, so I thought when you were saying Clonaid.com, it was more like we're going to help create legislature to aid the clones.
No,
But-
they're literally going to do it.
They're going to do it. So like, what is the aid bit about? Is that like Gatorade? Like I don't know. Like I'm very confused
They're
about
aiding.
the aid
They're aiding in cloning.
in creating clones.
Yes.
But these are all people who belong in a cult, who have signed up for a cult. And one thing you know is that they're not the brightest fucking, crayon in the crayon box, right? Like, not the sharpest tools. How are these people going to clone anything? They can't even build a website.
So that's the deceiving part. They have smart scientists that truly believe in this, and they have all kinds of money.
No.
Oh, yes. Because they've got riches that want to be cloned.
Okay. Actually, yes. Rich people who are searching for like meaning or whatever always join cults and are like, oh, you're saying you have all the answers. You just need like $20,000. Oh, you just need this. Sure, I'll give it to you. I have money, so much money.
And these people aren't even joining the cults. They're just giving them the money to
hire scientists.
We're going to talk about, yes.
Okay, that makes sense.
To fund their mission.
Great.
So on December 27th, 2 days after Christmas in 2002, Clonaid's chief executive, Brigitte Bossier, she's French, claims that a baby clone named Eve was born.
Oh my God. Why do they have to call her Eve? I get why. It's a biblical reference.
2 days after Christmas.
Yeah, like, ugh.
The media coverage was intense, as you can imagine. Again, full of criticism and ethical debates. So this Florida attorney named Bernard Siegel, he feels like he has to have his nose in everybody's business. He tries to appoint a special guardian for Eve because he thinks, well, this little girl's just going to be a lab rat. She needs to have a special guardian. I'm going to do everything in my power to get her a special guardian.
As an American, and she's, in France.
Right.
Of course we're going to put our fucking noses into it.
So I won't go into all the details. Suffice it to say there comes a point in where he's questioning the company and whether their claim is real because they're not showing proof of this cloned baby Eve. And their somewhat argument is, well, but for their own protection, both from the mother who we had the baby in her uterus in her oven, both for her protection, who's going to be raising this child, by the way, and the child. So we're not going to do that. But in my mind, I'm like, couldn't there still be some other way to show proof that you did this without giving the identity?
Yes,
there's got to be a way.
I mean, you could take a video. You could probably, I'm thinking just like, you could probably have something along the lines of like, time lapse. There has to be some like papers, another like a third party to validate, like a third party scientist or like community.
A scientist would keep things classified. Like they could do it and still keep things secret. They would do that.
Yeah. There's like, that's why they have like, research papers and stuff like that. Like there's,
I think there's
that's
ways.
Protecting. Yeah, definitely.
I think there's ways. And so that was a little for me. Like, okay, that seems a little shady if you're not going to give some level of proof.
This is starting to smell.
It's starting to smell a little bit. Yeah, I agree. All right. So with all of now they're getting a lot of attention. People are actually starting to try to sue them for information and et cetera, et cetera. CBS gets a hold of Bridget for an interview. It's a very interesting interview, and it's actually from Australia. The 60 Minutes version in Australia on CBS.
They are the best.
I started watching the 60 Minutes in Australia.
It's the best.
They got some good effing stories.
They have great stories. Okay, like this has, absolutely nothing to do but 60 Minutes Australia, oftentimes, even when I'm looking, like researching topics or whatever, they always are cutting edge and they're thoughtful about what it is that they're. I just watch 60 Minutes Australia on YouTube like all the time.
Really?
Yeah, they have great. The reporting's really great. And
this one I saw it's fantastic.
And interesting stories. You're not like, ugh,
exactly.
Do I really want to hear about politicians being douchebags again? Like, we know it.
Right.
So they covered this.
They did. They got a hold of her.
Bridget. And Bridget is...
She is the chief scientist and kind of like not the CEO. Well, I guess kind of the CEO of the Clonaid.
Okay.
But remember, Rael
Yes.
is the leader.
Messiah.
Yeah. And this is all happening under his direction. So they get a hold of her, they interview her, and it comes out, well, Clonaid actually isn't a company. It's a brand name because no one can find it like a street address or anything. And they go, well, no, it's a brand. And again, their argument is you can't know where we are. People are crazy. And they will do crazy things if they know where we are, if they knew where our brick and mortar building is, where our scientists live, who are scientists, where people could potentially kill them.
I mean, I do agree with that.
Yeah.
I do think that there would be a lot of wackadoos who are like, this is wrong. I mean, even me, like, I'm kind of like, you're playing God, and I don't know how. Like, I don't trust motherfuckers. I don't trust people to.
Well, agreed.
You know?
I don't trust people either.
So it like is it a cop out potentially? But also, is it true? It's totally true. They would like go. I mean, it is France. It's not the United States. People don't have arsenals in their homes. But
True.
Still, I could see someone doing that.
Well, and she admits that she's under a lot of investigations, federal investigations. She admits all of this, and she says they've got about 5 or 6 lawyers working full time. Everything they're doing is ethical, above board. They're doing things very methodically, scientifically. And besides, they're not seeking investments from Americans anyway. But tell that to Mark and Tracy Hunt of West Virginia, who gives Clonaid $500,000 so that they could get a lab built in West Virginia to clone their son, their dead son.
Oh, fuck. Here is where I was wondering if something like this would take place.
Yep. The Food and Drug I have so much to cover. I'm not gonna go into a lot of these details, but the Food and Drug Administration, they end up shutting this lab down.
So there is a lab in West Virginia.
Not anymore.
Okay, but there was.
There was.
Okay.
So now, but here again, I'm gonna jump right up on my soapbox for a hot second.
Please.
And just give you a little preach. I need people to get their feet back down to earth for just a hot second, because you got to understand that if you clone somebody, that clone is not the same person who you just cloned.
Yes.
Right? If you take a cell from me and you create a clone of me, that clone is not me.
No.
And especially if you are religious at all, I don't have to tell you that. You should believe that. And I know I joked about being cloned the other day, but the reality is that is a different person. They aren't my slave.
Yeah.
I can't control them. I can't make them do half of my job so I can have 8 more hours in the day. Yeah. They are another living being, yes. Another human being, and they certainly are not me. And they may look like me, and we'll find out, may not look identical to me, because there were some experiments that we'll talk about with some cat they did. The cats looked nothing like the clone.
Whoa. Okay.
So I guess my point is your clone. Just because you clone your son, you're not going to get your son. No. That's what I'm driving at.
And like, here's the thing. Grief does crazy things to people. Mm-hmm. And to be completely honest, like, I'm sorry, but Clonaid is like, it's fucked up to prey upon people who are in the thick of grief. And I've been there. I know, like, when you're there, like, nothing makes sense. Your brain is fried. Your brain is being taken over, and you can't make rational decisions, which, this family in West Virginia, they're like, oh, we just miss our son so much. He probably died tragically or suddenly. And they just want to have one more day with him. And, even like an animal, like they talk about cloning your pet dog or your pet cat.
Yes.
You clone that. That's not going to be the same,
No.
animal.
No.
They're not, because what are we? We are, we are our experiences, and like that's what makes us who we are. It's the people we've been around, the experiences we've had. It doesn't really have much to do with an exterior, with what we look like on the outside. It has everything to do with the sum of our experiences and who we are and how we deal with those things.
An identical twin is in fact a clone.
Yes, they are clones.
They are actual literal clones.
Yeah.
They are two different people.
And I don't know if you've ever been friends with identical twins. No?
I've not ever. Have I? I don't think I have. Oh, yes. Yes, I have.
Yeah.
Well, my cousin had identical twins. I didn't know them super well, but yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's I've been friends with identical twins before IVF was like a big thing, because I was born in 1987. So there weren't a ton of twins out like there are today. But they have very different personalities. Like they might have some things that are very similar.
Yeah.
But they're totally different. They might look the same, but like, okay, we need to think a little bit deeper, friends. Like it's not the same thing.
Two humans.
And how tragic would that be for those parents in West Virginia to clone their son? Let's say they did it, and have someone who just like hated them or like just was like a total asshole.
Right.
Like it's like, okay, cool. Now we're grieving the fact that we even tried doing this to our son.
Exactly. And I know I can pretty much with certainty say they're not going to be happy.
No.
Because
not
it's
gonna be
not
happy.
their son.
And what they're trying to do is fix a hole that will always be there.
Right. Without the clone's permission, by the way.
Yes, that's a huge issue. Like, go to therapy, okay, West
Right.
Virginia parents. Like,
Get some therapy.
get some therapy, do some work. Like, don't clone your son. It's weird.
Yes, it's weird. So let's talk a little bit about the science of it all.
Yes.
So there's three types of cloning that happens outside of nature, or what we call artificial cloning. That's gene cloning, reproductive cloning, and therapeutic cloning.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now gene cloning is also known as DNA cloning, and it's very different from reproductive and therapeutic cloning. Now, gene cloning copies genes or segments of DNA. There's a thing called CRISPR.
I feel like
you
I've
heard
heard
of it?
this. Yeah.
These words make no sense. Clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats. That's what a cluster
Okay.
that stands for. And it's a technology that enables geneticists and medical researchers to edit parts of genomes by removing, adding, or altering sections of the DNA sequence. This is how you get blue eyes.
I was gonna say
or
designer
how you
babies.
remove the cancer cells, or
Okay, but this is only, like, out of curiosity, is this only for like embryos? Like, so before, excuse me, like, this is gonna sound so stupid, but you can't do this on existing human beings. Like let's say they have
right, because
cancer.
your DNA is your DNA.
Your DNA is already there. You can't like do anything to it. This is on embryos.
Although I think that they are working on that, and I'm not a scientist by any stretch, but I think this is like, you know how they do I think, what is it called, mDNA or RNA or something weird like that, where they are starting to figure out how to edit.
Yep.
And then you inject that, and then they replicate and blah blah blah.
Which would be
blah.
great for things like cancer.
That's what they're trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In 2018, a guy by the name of He Zhenkyu, Japanese, I can't pronounce it, he reported that he had altered the genetic makeup of IVF embryos and implanted them into a woman's uterus, leading to the birth of twin girls. And now his team from Southern University of Science and Technology in China, they made use of CRISPR to do this. And and they altered the girls' DNA so that they would be resistant to HIV.
Oh.
And in 2019, he's convicted in a court of violating medical regulations for ultimately doing this. And he was actually just released from prison like 2 years ago.
Okay, so this is a question, right? Like, how do you test whether or not they are, they can't catch HIV
because you would take their blood or whatever.
Oh, you'd put it. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm like, you're not injecting them or something.
Exactly.
Like, that's fucked up.
Yeah, no.
But okay, interesting.
So reproductive and therapeutic cloning share a lot of the same techniques, but they're done for different reasons. So reproductive cloning is the copying of whole animals. That's what, when we're talking about cloning, that's what we think of. Reproductive cloning.
Okay. So whole animals. Yep.
Yes. Now, in reproductive cloning, researchers remove a sonomic cell. A sonomic cell is just a mature cell.
Yeah.
You would take from your body, like a skin cell.
Mm-hmm. Or an udder cell.
Or from an udder. And you take that from the animal that you want to copy, and then you transfer the DNA or the DNA of the donor cell, which is the nucleus. That's the word I'm looking for. The nucleus, which is what carries the DNA. And you replace it in the egg or in an oocyte. And an oocyte is like it's a cell from the uterus wall that can also has the ability to replicate or split. So it doesn't necessarily an egg, but it has the ability to do what an egg can do. Mm-hmm. So when you clone, you can either take the nucleus out of the egg and put the new nucleus in, or you can do that nucleus DNA with an oocyte cell. Mm-hmm. So there's those two ways of doing it. Now they can do this they can remove the cell in the egg in two different ways. The first method, they remove the DNA containing nucleus of the sonomic cell with a needle. Okay. And inject it into an empty egg.
Yes.
And in the second approach, they use an electrical current to fuse the entire sonomic cell with the empty egg. Mm. So there's like these two different little methods. Very interesting.
Yes.
Very intriguing. And then therapeutic cloning produces embryonic stem cells for experiments aimed at creating tissues, replacing. This is how they grow ears and kidneys and things like that. Or they get stem cells. So the richest source of embryonic stem cells, you hear people doing like stem cell research and stuff, is tissue formed during the first 5 days after an egg has started to divide. So when you do that cloning or you create the embryo and it starts to divide and make itself thing, that is the time that it's richest in stem cells. And they say at this stage, the embryo consists of a cluster of about 100 cells. And these 100 cells can become anything in your body. That's what's so fucking fascinating.
It's insane.
That's how your body grows an ear or grows a kidney or grows a heart or whatever, right?
It's
from
crazy.
These. And so if you think about it, if you had those, that is how they can grow ears or grow, Alicia's, leg fell off. Okay, we're going to grow her a new leg, or she needs a new replacement kidney. So we're going to grow her a new kidney from her stem cells.
Yes, if you have the stem cells, right?
Yes.
So you first have to have those stem cells.
You have to have those stem cells. Yes.
Which a lot of people are doing.
Exactly.
Now.
Yes, yes. Stem cells are harvested and cloned from cloned embryos at that stage of development that I was talking about, but it results in the destruction of the embryo while it's still in the test tube.
Ooh.
And so now Alabama would tell you that's killing a child.
Right. Yeah. It does call into question.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I do know, like those stem cells have helped people who are fighting, diseases. Michael J. Fox, who has Parkinson's disease, it's helped stave off some of the worst effects. He's still living, with that diagnosis. So it helps it helps people who are
Generated from his own cells, by the way.
right. So it's like
These are his cells.
we're not just like, but here's the thing. Like a lot of people who are uneducated will sit there and say, no, there's like baby banks and they have like these babies that they're killing. And that's how we're getting, these stem cells. So they're basically baby killers. And
No, they're taking his sonomic cells, putting them in an oocyte, creating these, what people would call embryos. And in the first 5 days, they're extracting those 100 stem cells. And then in the process of that is destroying the embryo. It's his cells.
and it's his, yeah. So he's giving permission for it,
Yeah.
right? Like,
yeah.
but also, the question is like, if it's a clone, does the
Exactly.
clone have,
But you're killing a baby.
does the clone have the right? Does that,
Yes.
living thing that is creating something?
Precisely. Are you killing a living thing?
Yeah.
Yes, this is the argument. This
Yeah.
is exactly
It's a
the
good,
argument.
It's a good question.
Now, in 79, researchers produced the first genetically identical mice by splitting the mouse embryos in the test tube and then implanting the embryos into the wombs of the adult female mice. This is exactly what happens to identical twins.
Right.
Right? It literally just goes, gets
splits.
things and it splits in two and goes bloop, two. Okay, so that was in 79. Shortly after that, researchers produced the first genetically identical cows, sheep, and chicken by transferring the nucleus of a cell from an early embryo into an egg that had been emptied of its nucleus, like we were talking about
Right.
before. Okay. And then in 97, Dolly's created.
Good old Dolly.
Good old Dolly. And then 2 years later, after that, researchers in Japan cloned 8 calves from a single cow. Only 4 of them survived.
Interesting.
Other mammals have been cloned by sonomic cells too, like cat, deer, dog, horse, mule, ox, rabbit, and rat. And now that we've kind of talked about how science and how it links to immoral or moral, kind of beliefs and
Yeah.
thoughts. I now am going to tell you something that cloning happens in nature.
Okay.
So, and it's not just done in a lab. And I'll give you 3 examples.
Please.
There is a plant, well, a tree to be more specific, called a Palmer oak.
Okay.
And it is estimated to be about 13,000 years old because it keeps cloning itself. It requires no, not sexual propagation, but like there's, like flowers and trees, the pollination, right?
Yes.
It requires none of that. It's literally cloning itself.
That's the dream, am I right? You go, Palmer Oak.
There is a seagrass called a Poseidon ribbonweed. It's about probably 4,500 years old.
Wow.
Dandelions are another thing. They
Yes.
will clone themselves. And they are identical.
They
clones,
are
like
identical.
Literal identical clones.
I've never looked at it.
Another example are single-celled organisms like bacteria.
Oh, yeah.
They all produce genetically identical offspring through a process called asexual reproduction. It is without any sexual reproduction or
Yeah.
reproduction from a bee or a wind, pollination, right?
Even like cancer cells, right? They can replicate.
Yeah.
And that's why like the problem with cancer is that it's these
It
cells
can
that kind of
do
go
that.
rogue and they just continue to grow and grow and grow
Yeah.
and replicate itself.
And we talked about identical twins,
Yeah.
the actual splitting of the fertilized eggs. So it's not like this is an unnatural event.
Right. Yeah. This is something that is happening in nature.
It happens in
doesn't
nature.
just happen in a lab. It's been happening forever.
Right. And it's not just twins. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not just humans. It's like,
It's animal.
it's animal, it's plants.
Plants. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Mainly plants.
Now, some of the benefits. So personally, I think we have the same moral considerations for people have with human animals I personally feel like we need to have the same moral considerations for animal cloning that we do for people, because quite honestly, I have more sympathy for animals.
I like animals better than human beings. Okay, but I have a question about that.
Okay.
So we want to have, like you're saying, okay, we need to also have sympathy, but is it like, okay, there's so many people who need to be fed, right?
Uh-huh.
If we could clone a meat source
Uh-huh.
and clone it in a way that like maybe the meat source, like a cow or something.
Yep.
And have it grown in a laboratory.
Yes.
Which I believe that they have done. They have.
In 2008 of January, the FDA approved that and said that is safe to do.
It's okay to do.
Yes.
So it's not like they're raising the cow and having the cow like roam a pasture and then killing the cow. Like it's like lab grown meat, right? No.
No. Well, they can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
They can do that too. Grow a steak.
Yeah, you're like, oh, hey, we really
Can you grow
New
me
York
a
strip?
filet?
Yeah.
No. They're literally creating cow clones
Okay, so these
and then slaughtering the cow, like you would like a birth cow. Yeah, but they are also literally growing a patty.
Right, which
They are doing that too.
I kind of feel like that's a little bit more
Humane.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because. Well, okay, I'm gonna get on the edge of some fringe arguments here.
Oh, okay. Yes, we love it here.
But if you're gonna clone something that's living, I mean, it's a living organism. It is if you were to find, let me put it this way, if you were to find this little growing meat patty on another planet, you would call it life.
Yes, that's very well. Okay, I mean, yes, you would. Yes, you would.
Okay, so that's why again why I'm saying it's kind of fringe, but we're so hung up on cloning humans that the second that it, I don't know, starts to propagate, it is an embryo, so it's a human. Or the minute it just starts to grow a spine or a heartbeat or just whatever you define it as a human, then that's when we're saying it's immoral. But in the reality, does it have a soul? Is that what we're killing? You know what I'm saying?
Does the meat patty have a soul?
Does the meat patty have a soul?
No.
No. Of course it doesn't.
Yeah.
But then I would argue neither does the little clump of cells.
Right. Because okay, here's the question. Here's something that comes up in my head. If the meat patty can replicate itself, by all means, meat patty, replicate yourself. Like maybe there's something more. If the cells, or the test tube, like, you know, what were those called again?
The test
like
tubes.
The babies, or like what they're claiming are babies in Alabama.
The embryos.
Embryos. I could not think of the word. If the embryos could sustain life outside of the petri dish or whatever it's in, by all means, yes, it's life, and it can grow, and you know, but it none of these things can. These are being created in a lab under very specific settings. So like, is it really? I don't know. Is it really life?
But I would argue that a baby growing in a can't survive outside of the womb either. But that's killing a human. Again, I don't want to get into all these crazy arguments because we could argue. I can argue. See, here's my problem.
Yes.
I can argue both sides deeply and passionately.
Yeah. I totally see both sides.
Yes.
I completely see it. Yeah. Especially like it's just so nuanced.
Yes, it is. It is. Okay, so we talked about asexual replication. Yes. The benefits, which we were getting into. You know, the same researchers that made Dolly, they created other clones that were modified to produce milk that contains a human protein that is essential for blood clotting. And their thought was, okay, well, we're going to create this sheep, this sheep that produces milk that will have this protein in it that helps human clotting to give to hemophiliacs.
Oh my God. Yes.
Makes perfect sense.
Total sense. Instead of being on like all of these clotting, like blood clotting,
medications that are doing all these other things.
Yeah, like very negative, like side effects.
Exactly. So now we're just feeding you goat's milk that helps you clot your blood.
Hopefully you're not, lactose intolerant.
Right. That's a different problem.
That's interesting.
So that's a benefit.
Yeah, definite benefit. Yeah.
Genetically identical animals are better for drug testing because their results are uniform as opposed to potentially different based upon like some other genetic makeup. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's another benefit of having cloned animals. Rebuild populations of endangered species, which you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Hello, Jurassic Park, bitch.
Yes. Yeah, cloning them. I mean, okay, so here's a question that just came up in my mind. If you're cloning something, okay, we're making copies, right? We're making a copy of something.
Yes.
When, I don't know if anyone has like used a copy machine. Maybe people haven't because we don't use paper anymore, but like you have a copy.
Yes.
And you don't have the original file anymore, or the original paper.
Oh, to make a copy of a copy.
You make a copy of a copy, and the more times you're making a copy of a copy, the copy is not as dark. You can't see
creates defects.
It creates defects. There are issues that come up.
Yes.
Just in a paper, let alone genetic material. Where you're making a copy of a copy.
Yes.
You don't have the OG, the original, because the original's dead. So you're making a copy of a copy, and then you have genetic defects that come out of it, or maybe the clone lives a shorter lifespan.
So I don't think you're right.
Yeah.
I think that would genetically create some big problems.
Yes.
I think, even for my complete ignorance of this topic. But what they are cloning are cloning originals. So
they still have the OG.
Yeah, exactly. They're not creating a clone and then taking the DNA from the clone to create a clone. They're like, well, I'm just going to use Jurassic Park as an example. They're like literally finding the DNA in an old piece of amber. You know what I mean? So that wasn't a clone.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was an original.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Or like the sheep or the cows, right? They're not creating them from a clone. They're literally taking them from a cow that was born, out of nature and cloning that into more cows or whatever.
I hope they don't do it with dinosaurs.
Oh,
they probably have. They have.
Fiction to truth, girl.
Yeah, it's true.
It could really happen.
Oh my God.
They actually did this for an endangered species of ox.
Oh.
And some African wild cats. That they had these frozen embryos saved for like a very long time, and they were actually able to start creating these animals.
So you're saying we could have had the dodo?
Yes.
back?
Yes.
That is like, I really want the dodo.
Maybe someone has some
dodo
DNA somewhere.
Yeah, there has to be something, but okay, scientists, please
get on the dodo.
Get on the dodo.
And then the other one is, like you said before, cloning your pet. Although, again, do not expect
this
to have your Marvin by your side.
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be your Marvin.
No, it's going to look like your Marvin.
Yeah.
But it's not going to be the same animal.
No. And like I said before, the researchers had found that when they had cloned some cats, the cats were like, is this the right? Did we do this right? Like it looked nothing like what it was cloned from.
Okay, so that's another thing that like kind of came up in my head about it is, well, because we carry all of these genetics, right?
Yes.
And like you, like, okay, I have brown eyes, but my mom had like blue has like blue-green eyes or something. So I probably also carry the blue-green eyes
Gene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that what was selected is brown eyes.
Yes.
For me.
Right.
Like genetically, I did the 23andMe, which I really regret doing, but
why?
because now they have my fucking
DNA.
yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't, yeah, anyways, whatever. It's all said and done. But it said on there.
No one in your family better ever murder anybody because they will figure out who it is.
For sure. Yeah. My dad's on there too. It's like, yeah. Hey, if anyone's a Machuca, like you're fucked. But it said I should have straight hair genetically, that it's likely that I would have straight hair. My hair is not straight.
Hails to the no.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting?
Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, that was like one of the things that came out of it. It was like probably
so then
has
that
straight
makes
hair.
me question like the validity of their results. Like, shouldn't they know?
Well, I still carry because my mom has straight hair, and my dad, a lot of his siblings. He's one of, let's see, all of his siblings. They don't have nearly as curly hair as I do. He has like 6 siblings. He's the only one with really curly hair. Some of them have wavy hair. Some of them have straight hair, but no one has like ringlets like I do. You know, out of like 30 plus cousins, because we're Latin and it was Catholic background, like nobody used protection. Out of all of my cousins, 60 plus, there's like 2 of us that have curly hair.
Wow.
Which is interesting, but we all have this like similar genetics from that side.
Yeah.
You would think, but that's where it makes sense, where if you have a cat that was orange and it would come out, black and white.
Yes.
Because it still has those
traits. Yeah.
Those traits, unless you start doing designer animals.
Pick those out and swap them out and all of that shenanigans.
All the shenanigans.
So, you know how we were talking about in 2008, the FDA approved that it was safe to eat cloned cow, pig, and goat, including milk.
Oh, and milk. Okay.
Right. So if you get milk from a cloned cow,
it's cool.
It's all cool. But for those of you listening who are freaking the fuck out right now, thinking you may be eating a cloned cow, it's really expensive to do. It's still expensive to do that process right now.
So they're not
the
really.
chances are
You're not.
You haven't eaten or drinking
unless you like specifically asked for clone meat. I would specifically ask for like cloned.
As
like
long as it was growing the patty. Yeah.
Yes. I don't necessarily want it to be like raised and then
raised
slaughtered.
Clone.
Yeah. Give me a patty.
Yeah.
Even though it's weird.
Yeah.
What would I guess here's a question I have is like, why would you want to clone like a protein source? Like
for the reasons that you mentioned. Food security, you're creating, and it's less harmful to the environment, right? Because now
that's
you're not
the patty, right? Not the actual.
Yes, if you're like literally growing meat.
Yeah.
Yes, if you're growing meat.
Yeah.
But same true for So I guess for when you're actually cloning the animal, I guess it could be argued it's the same thing. You're creating more food source.
But currently, it's not a problem. We can still like these animals are still.
I agree. I don't
being like breeding.
Of course, we don't. I guess I couldn't know that for sure, but yes,
but it would be a problem if they weren't, or
That's
like
right.
they were unable to breed.
That's right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So what's the purpose? That's why it's so expensive. It's like it's not necessary.
Right. Okay. So again, with any technology, people can use it for good or they can use it for bad.
Always.
Here's a scenario. Because we know how to clone genes and we know how to edit genes. And we know how to do reproductive cloning. We could create clones with modified genes. So now you create a dozen supervillains, or 2 dozen, or 100 or 1,000,000 supervillains. But remember what we talked about before? You create your 100 supervillains. Maybe 90 of them are like, I'm not up for this.
Yeah. I'm a peace man. I'm like just like a
I
hippie.
like love, but dude.
Yeah. Free love, man.
So you can try to do all the genetic stuff,
Yeah.
but it doesn't guarantee that you're going to get that. And by the way, when you start effing with genes,
Yeah.
I think you are asking for all kinds of problems.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, currently people are already like, aren't there already designer babies? Like people can actually choose traits for their children.
Yes. In fact, I think I seem to recall they had performed a test and they saw that the baby had the gene or something for Downs or something of that nature. And they actually went in, took it out, edited it.
Yeah.
And I don't know whatever became of that, but
Well, I think I swear, and this is just like definitely conspiracy theory,
Mm-hmm.
but I swear I've heard of like rich people choosing like what color eyes their kids have.
I wouldn't
know?
doubt it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt it.
It would not surprise me at all.
You're right.
And-
I want a blonde hair, blue-eyed little Hitler. So.
Yes, exactly. People, yeah. And it is that nefarious. Like, should we just allow people to, or, you know, babies to just have the random traits and then see? I kind of think it is probably wrong, but I'm not the person who has a child with a genetic disorder
That's
or
right.
disease.
That's right.
So
That's right. Now, beyond all these moral struggles that we would have, it is actually more difficult to clone a human than it is an animal.
I was going to ask that. Yeah. More complex.
Now, there are these two proteins that are essential for a cell to divide. They call them spindle proteins.
Yes.
And they're located really close to the nucleus that carries the DNA, the chromosomes. And that's true for like primate eggs, like humans and monkeys and such. And to have a successful clone, you have to remove the nucleus that carries the DNA and replace it. But you can't fuck with those spindle
Oh yeah.
because if you don't have those spindle proteins, it won't work.
Yeah.
But because they're so close in a human that they're always getting destroyed when they try to remove the nucleus. And I guess there's a couple of ways of removing the nucleus. They do it through dye, or they do it through. There's a couple of other things that also destroy the spindle.
It's like a firewall.
But with animals and stuff, it's like a firewall. But with animals and stuff, those spindles are spread out throughout the egg, and so you can't destroy them as nearly as easily.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of
It's
like a built-in protection,
It's
right?
built-in protection. It's like a fail-safe. It's like a or like a kill switch. Like the spindle, these spindles are like kill switches.
Yeah.
So if people are trying to fuck with the human or primate, DNA or replicate them,
Yeah.
it's like a fail-safe.
Now they've gotten better at it. They've started.
Of course they have.
Of course they have. I found a report where there is a lab in the United States that is cloning humans to this very day.
Shut up.
But they stopped the process about 14 days into the cycle because that's when it starts to grow a spinal cord.
Oh.
And then
okay.
that's when they're considering it to be
Human.
on the verge of life. So that's when they stop.
That's definitely when they air quotes stop.
Yeah.
There's no way they haven't
Now,
gone
there
all the
are
way.
no federal laws in the United States banning cloning. And there's 15 states that ban reproductive cloning and 3 states that prohibit use of money to fund such activity. There's 10 states that have clone and kill laws that prevent cloned embryo implementation for childbirth, but allows the embryos to be destroyed. So it's very, very different depending on what state you're in as to what you can do and what you cannot do with Clones.
It's, I mean, and it is interesting because I really wonder what the international laws are, because we're speaking from an American perspective.
Yes,
But how do
and
other
I do
countries...
think some countries have jumped right on the ban. There's a map actually that exists, and if you look, there are some countries that have full on ban. And then India, I think it's India, United Kingdom, Australia, America. I think they have some form of illegal, some form of illegal. I think Canada is full on illegal, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, I have to look, but I think that was true. So I end our discussion today where we began. What is an embryo? And by definition, is a single stage of development of a particular organism, an organism that reproduces sexually. Embryonic development is part of the life cycle that begins just after fertilization of a female egg by a male sperm cell. That is the definition of an embryo. That definition was created before we knew anything about cloning.
Yeah.
And that definition specifically calls out sexual reproduction. So does that mean, as I stated before, if I take a sonomic cell and put it in an oocyte, do I have an embryo?
I mean, yeah, I think the whole definition needs to be reworked.
Yes, exactly. We've got some thinking to do. And is it like Alabama says, the moment a cell mass starts its process, is that a child? Is it just before it starts to develop a spinal cord like that lab thinks? Yeah. Is it when it starts to develop an organ or a heartbeat? Like,
there's so many freaking questions.
So many questions. And I would love to hear people's thoughts on this. Yeah. But please keep your comments respectful and articulate, please, because this can, like I said before, can get into some really sensitive rabbit holes.
Sure.
But I'm curious to see what people's thoughts are, if they've had any experience with it, if they know any clones.
Yeah.
If you are a clone.
Oh my God, please tell us.
If you know any scientists that clone. You can pick up the phone, or you can hop on our website at thebizarref.com. You can click that little mic in the bottom right-hand corner, and you can record us a message.
Yeah.
Call us right now. Easy number, 970-364-3663.
Yeah, we still need that jingle.
Still have to make the jingle.
Yeah.
970-364-3663. Give us a call. Let us know. I want to hear what you think about clones. Do you have any final thoughts? Is your brain just a spinning?
I think my brain's spinning, and I think, like you were saying, I could probably argue both sides. I'm not sure I have a fully formed opinion yet.
And I think, not to interrupt you, I feel like that might be the case because you can understand both sides.
Totally. Yeah, I can totally understand both sides. But I mean, like you were saying, I would love to hear other people's opinions. And that's how I learn, is just by listening to other people. I don't know. I see both sides, and I really worry about legislation and people jumping the gun in either direction. Kind
of like AI too,
it's
right?
Like, exactly.
We're on this cusp of the complete unknown that could really be a moral problem.
Yeah, and we really have to be careful and thoughtful about how we create legislation and how we create rules and frame both issues, especially framing this issue. Like, you don't want to jump the gun, but you also don't want to have people living on an island that are that are living for body part, like to harvest body parts,
right, Right.
Like, I see both sides, but this was so interesting.
Yeah,
and
good.
You know what? I thought that I would believe one thing when we walked into
this,
it. And as we've had this conversation, I feel like I'm more confused. So thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for that, Kevin.
Well, at least it makes you think. You're open to thinking.
Does.
Yeah, good. Okay, great. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank
and
you.
We'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye.